Hey, Dan Larson here. Today I want to show you how to make a very cool future bassy drum. I made this little snippet for you as a demonstration, but we're going to analyze the drum section of this little snippet a little later. So here is the loop itself. So this is not a very complicated drum section. Let me show it on itself. I don't want to build up the full groove from scratch because it would take a lot of time because, I synthesized a lot of drum hits, but I want to just, analyze for you guys. Let's start with the drum fills because, that is a really interesting one. I use the Native Instruments CC's drummer for that, and, we are having this kick, high tom and low tom basically. And these sound a little weird on itself, like this. So I wanted to make something cool to it, like adding a vocoder. And as a carrier, I use a noise carrier, so it gave some pretty nice touch to it. Made the sound a little more closer, more in the face. So after that I added a reverb too. And very short reverb type, so the decay time is at around 500 milliseconds and the dry wet is not too much, just add some little thickness to the sound. I also added some EQ by cutting the very lows because we don't want to conflict with the kick and the sub and the other stuff. And toms always play in the middle bass frequency, in the middle bass area, so we don't want the very low, and also a pretty intense boost on the highs. So right now and one more EQ to do, the same basically. I also decreased the frequency energy at around 8 kHz to, get rid of this sweepy kind of noisy sound, which comes from the processing, like the vocoder and the sound itself from the sound bank. We can just fix it by using a simple EQ. So this is really cool. And the compressor to the end, to make it even fatter and even in the face. It brings up the reverb and all the tails on the sound. So this is a nice processing to add some thickness to your toms. And future bass loves toms. So with this process, you can go from this sound to this sound, which is, again, I think it's very cool. So we are talking about how to build up your own future bass groove. Let's go to the main drums. Now I synthesized a lot of stuff here, and let's start with the kick. I used the Kick 2 plugin, which is awesome. I really love it. I added 3 custom clicks, as the software itself calls it, but basically this is the transient itself. These click, very short percussion kind of sounds give the transients of the sound. So these are not really clicks, they are, but a lot more professional to call them transients or more like, short percussion sounds to build up the transients with it, because without the clicks or the transient, the kick sounds like this, which is pretty lame. And what you want to do is add some harmonics to the sound. So you don't want to go to full sine wave, very artificial kind of kick drum, but you really want to add some acoustic kind of noise or acoustic kind of chaos to your kick, because future bass tries to mimic acoustic and instrumental kind of drums, like acoustic drums, because acoustic kicks are never too siney, so they always have this kind of harmonics coming from the physics of the kick drum itself, the skin, the wood, and everything else. And what I also like to do is give some drive to it, like as you can see, I'm using some pretty intense drive and some slight distortion, wave distortion on the kick itself, which generates a nice amount of harmonics, which I can get rid of using the EQ. So this is again a very nice thing to add some more harmonics to the sound and make it a little harder. Okay, let's go to the snare. It's a very nice snare, and I made it by synthesizing and layering with different sounds. So let me show you the layers. I prepared this group here to show you what I used for it. Okay, I synthesized this sound using operator. Let me just add some volume to it. And I also applied some EQ to get rid of the very lows and middles basically, because I use it as a top layer. And also in the group there are some processes which make the sound a lot different. So this was a sound what I synthesized using operator. Unfortunately I can't show you the source itself, but a slightly modified version I can show you because it is still in there in the groove. I'm going to show you in a minute, but let me show you the other layers. And I also layered it up with a simple snare. Just, you know, to make the clicky kind of sound, the transient. And I also use another sound as a transient, this little clicky stuff. Because, you know, I wanted to add more punch to the snare. And it has that very nice little middle frequency which cuts through the mix pretty well. And also with the synthesized tops, this is how it sounds. The main thing here is the frequency shifting, which, you know, makes some very nice tone changing, very nice body to the sound. It is always a good idea to experiment with the frequency shifter even on the layers and on the groups, but be careful because it always generates very nasty low ends and very nasty frequencies on the low end. So you always need to be careful with that, and of course you need to, well, I always cut it out, so I don't want to mess with the low end, you know, it's just a pain. So this is why I use a low pass filter after reverb, a saturator and another EQ to be sure that I cut everything, and of course like a transient master at the end to make the sound even punchier. So once I had this snare, I believe I just compressed it. So this is all I did to the snare, but I think it sounds legit. Sounds pretty well, I believe. Okay, so let's go to the hi-hats, because these are very simple here in this example. The only thing you need to do is take an 808 kind of hi-hat, or a short little tiny hi-hat, and make some trappy kind of rhythm using the hi-hat. So this is what I did here too. And this is all very simple. I also added a crash using it as a ride. On every 16th. Alright, and another crash, you know, using it as a regular crash. And the interesting thing is coming now, because I use an operator to make an offbeat kind of hi-hat, which sounds like a vocal kind of, you know, cut sound. But it's not, it's an operator patch. So let me show it on itself. Let me just walk you through on the preset itself. It's very simple. You know, I used this chain, which means that we are having only one operator, which is on a pretty high course. I use a simple sine wave for that, and I modulated operator A with B, C, and D at the same time. So B, C, and D operators, don't touch them, don't touch the others. They just, you know, separately modulate operator A, which is again on a very high course. So I use a user-made, you know, sine wave, user-made waveform with these harmonics, and again on a very high course. So as you can see right now, we are having only this very high frequency kind of stuff. So it's time to go down with that. So that's modulated with another user-made waveform with these harmonics. I just push it up and I use a 0.5 course. So it is a very low frequency now. And this generates the body of the sound. And another operator, this time another sine again on a higher course, to give that little breathy kind of feeling. I also pushed out the transpose because we need a very high frequency kind of sound. But you can use this sound as a clap or a snare layer, you know, a snare noise layer. But on a very high note, it sounds like a vocal cut or something. I also added a chorus to make the sound more organic, because without that it's very artificial and very metallic synthesizer kind of sound. I used 2 instances of the choruses because this is the original sound. It's pretty interesting and pretty weak, but with the 2 choruses we, you know, push the sound to a more organic and more noisy kind of tone, and what I wanted to do here is cut the very highs, because we didn't want to go to a ride kind of sound, we wanted to have a vocally kind of tone. This EQ is not really important because I just cut the very highs. We don't need to boost the highs once I cut it out. And the frequency shifting, as I said before, can create very interesting tones. So we went from this sound to this. Alright, but as I said before, the frequency shifter always generates very nasty low end. As you can see, let me just disable this. So as you can see on this area, we have very nasty frequencies, which really needs to be cut. So I use the EQ8 to get rid of that. And reverb, I don't know what this is, doesn't really matter. And this is the offbeat kind of hi-hat thingy. And I also use an open hi-hat sound. This guy here, which is a modulated, a slightly changed version of this offbeat kind of sound. Okay, so this is the groove itself. As I said before, it's pretty simple, but once you got the idea how to make your own sound, how to create your own drums, especially the snare, because this is the most important instrument in future bass. Okay, so this was the groove itself. I hope I was able to provide you some important and helpful information about how to build up your own future bass groove, especially with the snare, because you know the snare is the soul, it is the most important part of a future bass groove. And also with these synthesized hi-hats, synthesized kind of percussion sounds, you can create your very own and very unique future bass groove. So I hope you enjoy this and see you in the next video, guys. Bye bye.